we hurtle headlong into the digital age, pause to ponder just how far we've come. The 80s generation had no .com, no digital. The future they imagined has been transformed by a technology revolution. My, how we've changed. Welcome to a short history of the modern world, charting the good and bad of a quarter century of innovation. This is Stop, Rewind. Nothing, not flying cars, wacky robots, nor luxury cities under the ocean sums up the ordinary view of what the future is all about, more than this one single word: space. Conjuring up fantastic visions of your summer holidays at Lunar Base 1 and business high flyers rocketing from New York to Sydney in under an hour. And don't laugh, we've been preparing for these adventures for over 50 years. And as you're about to see, we're almost there. And the journey so far, the moonshots, bad times and the outright weird, well, it's one hell of a story. Humans have always been interested in the heavens above, so once they got flying sorted, they started reaching for the stars. The Russians hit a home run in 1957 when they launched the very first satellite, Sputnik. They followed this up in 1961 when Yuri Gagarin rocketed into space for a brief 2-hour flight that took him around the world. Russian rockets crisscrossing the sky scared the hell out of their American rivals.
What the Soviets had demonstrated to a world arena was the ability to wage nuclear war with ballistic missiles.
And there was the question of a little bruised ego. So America stepped up to the challenge.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
And they did it. At this point in time, the promise was high. Moon colonies, moon mining, moon bases for further solar system exploration. It was a dream that was held onto until the 1980s.
I expect to see the first human outpost permanently established on the moon about 2005.
Well, that was wishful thinking. The moon landings had already ended by the early 70s when NASA was focusing on the space shuttle. A spaceship that could carry around 24 tons into space. But that was a lot less than the 118 tons carried by the Saturn V rocket, which took man to the moon. That wasn't the only problem with the space shuttle.
So we made a bum decision and took a chance and lost.
We never should have left the moon. We should have been there developing the things that we are only now starting to talk about.
Still, the space shuttle had done an okay job for almost 30 years, launching satellites for the military, science, and big business. But for the ordinary public, it's not the money, but the mystery of space that grabs the imagination. And never more so than when you add in these 3 letters. UFO. There's plenty of people certain they've encountered one.
Your brain's getting sucked out. You thought we were dead?
This is the Knowles family from Australia, and they believe a UFO picked up and shook their car while driving in the desert. A truck driver on the same desert road saw a bright egg-shaped object at the same time. Others had a more cynical answer for the car's erratic behaviour.
They're consistent with poor maintenance of the front brakes. And the last time that they were replaced, they weren't cleaned very well. and ordinary everyday use of a car that picks up a few dents here and there.
Still, many people strongly believe that UFOs are real and that governments are hiding the truth.
I've got overwhelming evidence, I'm convinced, that we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium, that some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft, that we're dealing with a kind of cosmic Watergate that is some small groups and governments of a number of countries.
But others hold out for evidence, not just talk.
Because this is such a passionate issue, because it's such an important issue, we must require the most rigorous standards of evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And unfortunately, the evidence is absolutely shoddy.
It was this desire for evidence that was behind a program initiated by a group known as the Planetary Society. A notable alumni of this organization being Hollywood director Steven Spielberg. One of their first projects was known as SETI. Short for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, the program uses radio telescopes to scan the radio waves of the universe for signals that may indicate intelligent life. Each day, the previous 24 hours of measurements are checked for anything apart from the usual white noise. And if there's nothing unusual, the antennas move to examine another half-degree slice of the sky. They've been going for 25 years now, and as SETI themselves state, there's no convincing evidence of life in outer space, as far as we know. But there is a lot of junk floating around, serious junk. Here at Cheyenne Mountain in America, the US Air Force is tracking most of the space junk that the thousands of rocket launches, moon missions, and satellite setups have left behind.
Within probably 5 years, this is going to be a concern worldwide.
Just as much of a concern was the fact that the radar system, back in 1985, was unable to track space junk smaller than a dinner plate. And that's a problem, because when the space shuttle is orbiting the Earth at 28,000 k's an hour, any object hitting it has the potential to do some serious damage. By 2005, the space junk issue had become NASA's #1 problem, with even more space junk floating around the planet. In fact, around this time, a piece of space junk smaller than a coin hit the shuttle's windscreen whilst in orbit and almost penetrated the cabin. Helping to prevent this disastrous scenario was an Australian laser that could locate space junk down to the size of a thumbnail, allowing the shuttle to steer around it. Perhaps one day soon, this same laser will even be able to destroy this space junk. That's good news for space exploration, because humans still have some way to go in their journey to the final frontier far beyond the moon.
In the mind of the public, the moon is a dead world from which we brought back rocks, and now you're going to spend a lot of money to go to the moon again and bring back some more rocks. Mars is a much more exciting place scientifically and in the public mind.
A mission to Mars. It's a fantastic dream, and a number of scientific missions have already blazed a trail. Back in 1976, the NASA Viking lander set down on Mars, taking the iconic photos that define the red planet. In 1997, the Pathfinder mission landed, carrying a small, mobile explorer called the Sojourner. Then in 2003, the Mars Exploration Rover set down, launching 2 mobile robots to explore the planet, and they were still driving around and performing scientific work in 2010. But where are the human explorers? Considering that in the 1990s, there was talk of a manned Mars mission in 2010.
To turn our back on that opportunity at almost any cost would be to deny the nobility of the human spirit.
The problem is, Mars is a long way away. A 3-month space flight just to get there. That's with the very fastest rocket propulsion available. And for that 3-month journey, a crew of 8 would need 6 tons of oxygen, 8 tons of food, and 100 tons of water. And any trip to Mars is going to take longer than 3 months. The scientists currently suggest around 600 days, and the earliest predicted blastoff would be in the 2030s. If by some chance we manage to get there, scientists might be able to recreate an Earth-like environment.
We have on the surface of Mars all the things you need to sustain life, all of the gases, all of the organic materials, all of the water.
This will involve warming up Mars by pumping greenhouse gases into the Martian sky in order to trap heat on the planet to create viable conditions for life. Ironically, what we are doing on Earth to damage our planet, putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, is precisely the same thing that could make Mars a vibrant ecosystem.
A sense of wonder at the notion that we can spread life, that life here on the Earth, where the only place we know it is now for certain, we can spread it somewhere else, and it can take a hold, a toehold, or a tree hold, if you will, and you can have two planets with life on them, two blue marbles in our solar system.
It won't be an easy process, and it could take thousands of years. But it might just give humans the breathing space they need in an overcrowded world. Mars may be a long shot, but over the past 50 years of space exploration, humans have already been working to make some very small bits of outer space habitable. They're called space stations, and they've been the stuff of science fiction since the early 20th century. Grand spinning worlds with all the joys of Earth in a utopian community. But the first incarnations of a space station were a little bit more practical. NASA's Skylab was launched in 1973 and was occupied for 171 days. The Soviets launched their most famous space station, Mir, in 1986. And it was occupied for a mighty 4,592 days, right through to 2001. Once more, it was time for America to step up to the challenge. So, before Mir even launched, then President Ronald Reagan rallied America's scientists.
America has always been greatest when we dared to be great. We can reach for greatness again. We can follow our dreams to distant stars, living and working in space for peaceful economic and scientific gain. Tonight, I am directing NASA to develop a permanently manned space station and to do it within a decade.
Scientists developed a number of designs for what was to be known as the Freedom Space Station. But with the collapse of the Soviet Union taking away any competitive rivalry with Russia, America's first Freedom Space Station was merged with the Russian Mir program. Then, with input from countries such as Brazil, Switzerland, and Japan, the new International Space Station was developed. Launched in 1998, it has now been occupied for over 3,000 days. It's been an important scientific research base, a symbol of international cooperation, and a realistic testing ground for how humans will adjust to the long periods of zero gravity required for the inevitable flight to Mars and beyond. Not everything in space is as elegant or successful as the International Space Station. Some of it's just downright, well, different. Like the space funerals offered by a Florida company.
Here in America, soon it will be possible to have the mortal remains of your loved one blasted up into space. Ashes to ashes, dust to cosmic dust.
5, 4, we've got for main engine start, we have...
For $3,900, we can put you in an Earth orbit for 63 million years. For $4,600, we can, we'll send you through deep space, and the good Lord only knows where you might land in deep space. You may be going forever.
They would take the cremains of a person and fit them into these tiny vials before packaging them on board a small, privately funded rocket and sending them into space.
And that's a human being in there?
Yes, it is.
Who is it?
It happens to be my brother-in-law. There he is.
This company really did get there, putting the first cremains into space in 1997. Another private effort that took a shot at the stars is Scotsman Steve Bennett, an amateur space explorer whose day job was as a technician at a toothpaste company. While Steve's had his setbacks,
Adrian, that's not the system that's causing the problem, it's the other system.
he's been able to successfully launch a number of rockets powered by a secret rocket fuel of his own design that uses sugar as a key ingredient. Steve has now stepped up from toothpaste technician to director of the Space Technology Laboratory at Salford University, England, and he's currently developing an eco-friendly rocket. These cartoons are a somewhat more commercial approach to space. They are part of the plans for the Shimizu Space Hotel. Planned for 2020, the Space Hotel is still on the drawing board, but they might just make it work. Shimizu is one of the world's biggest construction companies, and they still have the Space Hotel listed as one of their long-term goals. They're not the only ones trying to find new ways to get into the space race.
Of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it is cleared to tower.
Ever since the Challenger disaster 25 years ago, various companies have been trying to design something to replace it. A reusable space vehicle that is cheap, safe, and effective. The McDonnell Douglas DCX, nicknamed the Delta Clipper, was one design that could launch vertically like a traditional rocket. Fly, then land vertically, ready to be refueled and fly again. While it never flew in space, the DCX proved the concept of VTVL, vertical takeoff, vertical landing, and the whole mission could be run by only 3 operators. Unfortunately, a serious crash ended the DCX program, but the VTVL concept may well rise again in the future. The X-33 was another shuttle replacement that was hoping to set a new standard in reusable space transport, but stability of the sleek spaceship during flight was an ongoing problem. After NASA spent $912 million on the project, in 2001, the X-33 was scrapped. Next, the Roton, a private venture to create an affordable, reusable rocket ship. The plan was to use a combination of 4.8 million horsepower rockets, plus massive rocket-powered rotor blades to lift it up into space, then hover it back to Earth, ready to fly again. After 3 test flights using rocket-powered rotors in 1999, the Roton was seen to be extremely dangerous to fly, reaching a maximum altitude of only 75 feet. So in 2001, the project was axed, but perhaps as a proof of concept, it may still have wings.
It's possible that we could go back to a smaller size Roton that still uses blades for takeoff as an executive transport for flying halfway around the world in 1 hour.
With 3 different designs, all failing to create any new direction in spaceflight, government organizations and private companies will continue to use traditional rockets to launch satellites and resupply space stations. Like the European Space Agency's Ariane 5. Hardware is not the only aspect of space exploration that has seen endless attempts at improvement. Getting the human body space-ready is just as important. Back in the 60s, the American Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo space missions benefited from a selection and training program that successfully prepared their astronauts for the demands of spaceflight. A big part of that astronaut training in the 60s, right through to today, has been underwater, in tanks like this one here at the US Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Astronauts get used to working in a weightless environment. Just like anything involved in space exploration, it's expensive. Even back in 1986, when these astronauts were training for a shuttle mission, their underwater spacesuits cost $1.5 million. Some astronaut training was downright painful, especially in Russia during the communist era. The volunteers in this room were spending a year on their backs as part of an experiment to test the effects of the minimal movement that may take place on an extended mission. Back in America, preparing the body for zero gravity doesn't look any more comfortable.
A workout like this in the almost zero gravity of space is by no means easy, but it now appears to do little, if anything at all, to prevent in-flight osteoporosis.
It was hoped this Penn State University machine would find a way to combat the weakening of bones. In zero-gravity space, over 50% of the minerals in bones can degrade, leading to spontaneous breaks and fractures. Earthbound trials like this can have a real impact on developing health standards for astronauts in space, where almost any illness can have fatal consequences, because there's no paramedics just a quick phone call away. Any medical emergency must be looked after by the astronauts themselves, which is why astronaut training has to be so tough. It's not only to test whether the human body can withstand the gravitational forces, but if the mind of each astronaut has the persistence to work through disorientating, even traumatic experiences.
Oh, I'm glad it's over.
Perhaps the most surreal exercise NASA tested to prepare for space travel is this machine, the PAT, short for Pre-Flight Adaptation Trainer. It's a zero-gravity simulator that confuses the visual signals the brain is perceiving, preparing the astronaut for the upside-down world of space. For all the effort and money spent on astronauts, for the time being, the biggest breakthroughs in space exploration are being made by small robotic probes. Launched in 1997, NASA's Cassini probe took 7 years to reach its goal, Saturn. One of its areas of study there was the mysterious moon Titan, which orbits Saturn. Titan has a thick atmosphere suggesting an Earth-like geography, despite only being a moon. In 2004, Cassini launched the Huygens probe down onto Titan. Once there, the Huygens probe detected vast methane lakes, hydrocarbon sand dunes, and a liquid water ammonia ocean. A truly bizarre environment. And yet, there's still so much to explore. As the great cosmologist Carl Sagan once said, our feeblest contemplations of the cosmos stir us. There is a tingling in the spine, a catch in a voice, a faint sensation of a distant memory, as if we were falling from a great height. We know we are approaching the greatest of mysteries.